Good evening and welcome to Across the Pitch. We're the soccer show for people who think the LA Galaxy is a place that they went to on Star Trek. Now, of course, the LA Galaxy are an MLS club from Los Angeles, and on Sunday, the MLS playoffs will be starting, and the LA Galaxy are playing in the first round at Allianz Field against the Minnesota United Loons, who have kind of become our flagship MLS team here on Across the Pitch, and for the third time this season, we have the pleasure of speaking with Minnesota announcer Callum Williams, and myself, Phil Kennedy, and Matt Robards had a chance to sit down with Callum and talk a little bit about the upcoming playoffs, the match on Sunday with Minnesota and the Galaxy, and just everything from the Minnesota season leading up to this point. So let's go ahead and bring Matt and Kel on board, and thank you everybody for listening. Good evening and welcome to Across the Pitch. We have an extra special MLS playoff edition tonight, where Callum Williams, who of course is the announcer of Minnesota United, is joining us for the third time this season. As you may remember, Cal first joined us before the season started. Tell us a little bit about what the expectations were for the season. Again, he came on right around the All-Star break, and things were going good at that time. And now Minnesota has not only clinched their first playoff berth, but are going to be hosting their first home playoff game this weekend. So welcome to the show, Cal, and thank you for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
Yes, very well. Thank you for having me on the hat-trick appearance. It's always said that the third time is the charm, isn't it? So I appreciate it again, chaps. Always a pleasure to come on.
Matt Robards is with us here tonight, and Aaron was not able to join us, so it'll be me and Matt chatting with you here tonight. And I just wanted to kind of start off by going back to what I said in the intro. Is so when we first talked to you at the beginning of the season, you were saying that you thought Minnesota had a good chance of making the playoffs for the first time. When we talked to you at mid-season, by that time, you were saying, I think we might be able to get a home playoff game. Now you have the home playoff game. So how have the expectations shifted at this point in the season? Are you guys thinking you can take it the distance?
I think the expectations throughout the season were greatly elevated. As I said at the start of the campaign, I seriously thought, because of the off-season additions and the major addition being that of Allianz Field, that Minnesota United really had an opportunity to get themselves into the postseason for the very first time. And then, as you mentioned, we spoke in the summer during the All-Star break, and I would say that is when people started to think, maybe we can do something a little more here, because Minnesota United were flying. They hadn't dropped out of the top 7, and that remained the case throughout the entirety of the regular season as well. And I think, honestly, that the expectations were elevated, and everybody around the franchise thought we could do something really special here. And it's been a fabulous run, and we've been fortunate to be surrounded by a salubrious setting in that of Allianz Field, which has very quickly risen to the top of North American soccer standards in terms of stadiums and atmospheres on a match day. And look, accompanied by the off-season additions and one or two that we've made during the season as well, it's been a fine campaign for Minnesota United. Let's not forget as well, not only did they finish 4th in the Western Conference, in a very, very, very competitive Western Conference this year, they also got themselves to the Open Cup final as well. So all in all, should the season end on Sunday? I don't think it will. I'm sure we'll get onto that a little later on. But I think should the season end on Sunday, this campaign can be viewed as a success for Minnesota United for sure.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you mentioned the off-season additions here, and I'm kind of just going off the script we sent you, so I hope that's all right. But there has been a number that we've touched on. And now that we're done with the regular season, we know where Minnesota sits, 4th place in the West. looking back on that, which one of those offseason additions do you think was the best offseason addition? Which one stepped up the most, contributed the most? In a sense, who was the most valuable player as far as additions go?
That is the $1 million question, that is, Matt. Wow. It's difficult to pick one individually. For me, the main thing that changed with this club was the culture within the locker room. And the reason it changed was because of the experience and the veteran players that were brought into Minnesota United. They've been crying for a holding midfielder for a good 18 months now. We had, before the 2019 campaign, we had a sniff of a holding midfielder when Sam Cronin joined the club in 2017. But throughout the 2018 campaign, they signed several players in that holding midfield role, and it just didn't work as well as they thought it would. And in all honesty, I don't think anybody will crucify me for saying this. I think the recruitment wasn't the best in 2018, and they really missed an opportunity and didn't grab a number 6 in what is a very competitive market nowadays. So they went out and they got one of the best that's ever played in this league in the shape of Ozzy Alonso, who has personified the culture of the club and has most certainly become the leader that this team needed. And if you accompany that with the veteran leadership behind him, with the duo of Vito Manone, let's not forget this is a goalkeeper who was played at the very highest level in the Champions League with Arsenal, perhaps lost his way a little bit in England over the last year or two, through no fault of his own, by the way, because Reading weren't exactly a powerhouse and had many issues to tackle themselves, as well as a myriad of coaching changes. So, Vito Manone has been a stellar pickup. And look, I look at this without my black and blue tinted glasses on and without an unbiased view. For me, Vito Manone is the goalkeeper of the year this year in Major League Soccer. He has been phenomenal, and 11 shutouts in 34 starts is nothing to turn your head away from. So it's been a wonderful campaign for him. But I think if you are pressing me, and I know I'm cheating a little bit here by giving you 3, but I think that the one real difference has been Ike Opara. Now, if you look at what Minnesota had done over the course of the first 2 years defensively, over 140 goals, 140 goals were conceded in 2 seasons. They were historically poor defensively. And I think for me, at centre half, that there was a need, that there was, I think, a need for somebody who had won in this league, again, for some leadership. And I say that with all due respect because Brent Coleman is a very good centre-back. And Michael Boxall, who has been phenomenal this year, is also extremely...
Yeah, he's been playing really well down the stretch, too.
He's been absolutely wonderful, and having Ike Opara alongside him has really helped. But for me, Ike Opara has been the main difference because Minnesota United in the 2019 campaign conceded 43. That's 27 goals less, or 28 goals less, I beg your pardon.
That's almost one less per game.
Absolutely. And that isn't a coincidence. And it's also another coincidence that Kansas City, the team Ike Opara left, conceded 27 goals more than they did last season.
Yeah, so, they went from top of the table almost all the way to the bottom.
They have. It's been a very uncharacteristic season for Sporting Kansas City. But for me, Ike Opara has solidified a very stern backline this year. And it was certainly an addition that was needed for Minnesota. But I think just in general, that the culture in the locker room completely changed when you brought in those 3. The supporting cast has been fabulous as well. Roman Mekanier has been wonderful as well at right back, and the rookies, Sasani Dotson and Chase Gasper, have really given a good account of themselves as well. So it feels as though just about everything has gone right for Minnesota United this season. Now that there were some small wounds and cuts and bruises along the way, but it does seem as though just about everything has gone right for Minnesota United, and a lot of that has to go down to the veteran leadership in the locker room.
Yeah, as I was thinking about this question myself, those were the three guys that immediately came to my mind, and the way they formed just that spine. We hear it so much how important, having that spine is. And so Manone, Opara, Alonso have just been solid for Minnesota this year.
They have. They've been fabulous, and we're very fortunate to have them. And, moving into the postseason, these are players who have had success throughout their career. Particularly Ito Opara and Ozzy Alonso as well. So, but moving forward again, this is why I seriously think Minnesota United can put a run together in the playoffs. It's a difficult task ahead, no doubt about it, with the duo of Los Angeles coming their way potentially.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because that's the big story is the game that you have coming up at home against LA Galaxy. And now, of course, they're one of those teams that's really built around that one guy with Zlatan, where Minnesota, like you mentioned, you guys are more of a sum of the parts is greater type of team where you have that one guy that slots in and fills a role at each position. So first, how do you feel that you match up overall with the Galaxy, and what do you think are the keys to winning for Minnesota, and what are you afraid could go wrong that it could cause Minnesota not to advance?
Well, there's a couple of things here, and look, no doubt about it, on paper, LA Galaxy are simply the superior team. And attacking-wise, they have been a joy to watch this year. 58 goals doesn't sound like a lot when you look at the nearby neighbours, LAFC, with 85, but it's still not a bad return at all. And 30 of them have come from the big man up front, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So the key thing for me, you simply have to stop the service into Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I remember there was a game at LA Galaxy in the 2018 season when Minnesota United went there, and Minnesota United were absolutely fine in frustrating Zlatan Ibrahimovic in terms of when he would drop and look for the ball. There were so many times when he would drop and look for the ball and look for a secondary runner of some sort, and he would be supremely pestered by several in Minnesotan colours, and it really, really halted the Galaxy's progress. Now, for me, there is one individual who hasn't got the credit he deserves thus far since coming in for Boca Juniors, and that is Christian Pavón, who I believe in the 11 games that he's played for LA Galaxy thus far, it's only 2 games where he hasn't contributed a goal or an assist. Look, I'm not much of a stats man. I think stats can lie, but those stats certainly don't. And there's a reason why he has done so well. He's a full Argentine international, plays on the national team with several superstars on a regular basis. And, he really has been one of the keys to the driving force and the surge that the Galaxy has been on to end the season, apart from the last 2 games. But Zlatan Ibrahimovic has scored 14 goals in his last 10 games. And a lot of that has come from the service from Christian Pavón. And on the other side, Antuna as well. Uriel Antuna on loan from Manchester City has been a revelation as well. So attacking-wise, LA Galaxy are wonderful. Now, I do think they are suspect defensively. Giancarlo Gonzalez and Palenta, the Uruguayan centre-half, aren't exactly blessed with pace. So if I'm Adrian Heath, I'm going with Mason Coy up front on Sunday evening at Allianz Field, because I think he can genuinely get in behind with his pace. If he makes the right runs, if he reads the game well, I think he can get in behind. Now, where Minnesota United have to remain disciplined is in the wide areas. The right back, Romain Métanire, has been fabulous, and had it not have been for Ito Opara, in my opinion, a player who will be the MLS Defender of the Year and deserves it should he get it. If it wasn't for his performances, Métanire would have been in consideration for the Minnesota Defender of the Year. He's been wonderful. He's been a revelation, and we are very fortunate to have him. He fits the system perfectly. He's a modern-day fullback. Adrian Heath so eloquently described him as a horse and a work machine. A unit, I think, was another phrase that he used to describe him. So he's very powerful in his strides and his runs. He's got an engine on him. He's full of pace. He's powerful in the upper body as well. So he's somebody who often joins in on the attack. But I think one of the reasons why he's so successful for Minnesota United is because his recovery speed is wonderful when he's on defensive duties as well. So for me, he may have to be a little more reserved against LA Galaxy. You would assume he'd go up against Christian Pavon on Sunday evening. And I just get the feeling that if Romain Métanire is as abrasive as he always seems to be, that's the area where the Galaxy can exploit in the wide areas, play it into the big man, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And on the other side as well, Gasper has to be more reserved as well and a little more disciplined in what has been a very good rookie campaign for him. But he's going up against Uriel Antuna, who I mentioned earlier on. So discipline the key for Minnesota United on Sunday evening, no doubt.
That was a great breakdown for us, Callum. And I want to ask you this because you talked about, not being a stats guy, and I respect that. But LA and Minnesota have played 6 times in the MLS. Minnesota has drawn 2 and lost 4. So they have yet to beat LA Galaxy. Do you think Adrian Heath is using this as motivation for his guys, saying to them, hey, this is the one that matters. This is that one win that we go out, we knock them out of the playoffs. This is our first win over them. They're coming to our house, and we can go on from here and make a run. Do you think that's some motivation he's using, or is he being a little bit more reserved, maybe not talking so much about the fact that we have yet to beat this team?
I think internally he's probably using words to that effect, for sure. Externally, he will say everything that you expect a manager approaching his first playoff game to say, and be fairly timid and tame. But knowing Adrian like I do, if the players aren't motivated enough, if they're not self-motivated for this game, they won't play. It's as simple as that. And Adrian is very much one of these coaches where it's very much a rah-rah, you're doing this for the people who you love and doing this for your kids and your wife and your mum and dad and all this kind of stuff. He's very much a motivational type coach, which doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's doing tactically, because tactically he's very good as well. In fact, I think he's a step or two ahead of several in Major League Soccer. But I seriously think that there are those in the Minnesota United locker room that simply don't need motivating for this. And look, if they don't get motivated from a speech from somebody like Adrian Heath, well, you've got Ozzy Alonso and Iko Para and Vito Minone, the trio that we mentioned earlier on, who will be full of motivation. They know, they're in their 30s. They know that there's only so many years left ahead for them, and they'll want to be as successful as they can as they come to the end of their career.
If you can't get motivated for a playoff game, a home playoff game, first home playoff game in franchise history, then what are you doing on the pitch anyway?
Right. And on the flip side, if you guys beat LA, the Galaxy, you get LAFC next up in the playoffs, and that's a very different story. You guys have played each other 4 times. You guys have 2 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. And most importantly, this year you went into their stadium, Bank of California Stadium, and you guys beat them 2-0, and then you fought them to a 1-1 draw at home. Are you guys looking forward to that again, that possibility of going back to Bank of California and essentially getting a chance to cut the head off the beast that everyone has picked to win an MLS Cup this year?
Yes, should we get the opportunity, it's going to be very exciting, no doubt. And it was interesting, wasn't it? After that game where Minnesota United beat LAFC 2-0, as you say, LAFC went on a rather uncharacteristic run. I can't remember the run in itself, but I know they weren't as successful as they have been. I know they drew 1-1 at home to Toronto FC the game after, and they only got a draw because of a last-minute penalty as well. So I think actually Adrian Heath uncovered and identified the blueprint of how to go and play there, actually. And it was a 5-3-2 system where the fullbacks, or the wingbacks, if you will, were perhaps the main outlet where they would hit on the break, because as most fullbacks do nowadays, LAFC fullbacks that were very high up the pitch, and there were gaps to be exposed. But also what that did then is, when Minnesota United were absorbing pressure, it gave LAFC an element of comfort, as there would be at home anyway. But when you have like Mark Anthony Kaye coming on, and you have Asuesta in the field, because Minnesota United was so deep and they were okay and were comfortable and settled absorbing the pressure, what it actually did is it forced LAFC higher up the field, and it exposed a couple of gaps, which Darwin Quintero then was more than happy to duly oblige with his services and play his part. And it also gave a bit of room for the likes of Jan Gregory in midfield as well. And if you go back and look at the tape, you'll see it's those two players who play the ball into Mason Toy. He scores the goals, one from the most acute angle you'll ever see, and the second, he has absolutely no right to score from that range. But if you don't shoot, you don't score. So it really did set the blueprint in my opinion. And I do wonder if Minnesota United are given that opportunity to go to Banc of California Stadium again. It would not surprise me at all if they set up with that 5-3-2 formation again. But look, stranger things have happened. I know Adrian Heath is very fond of the 4-2-3-1. In my opinion, it's the most effective formation that Minnesota played with the players they have at their disposal. So we'll wait and see. But first things first, we have to go past a very good LA Galaxy side.
I remember watching that game at LAFC on TV, and it was just a full 90-minute performance. It was one of the most impressive games I've seen all season. Now, we talked about a little bit about Ike Opara a little bit earlier and how big of a signing he's been from the offseason and what a critical cog he's been. What do you think that his future is with the team? Is he a guy that you see as a long-term coming later into his career?
Interesting question, but I think I would assume, I don't know this, but I would assume Ike Opara would be the main centre-half for Minnesota United for the next 3 years, I would say, because then
3 years.
He'll be 33. Yeah, I would think so, because he'll be 33 then. If he keeps himself fit and keeps himself in shape, and there's no reason why he wouldn't, I see no reason why he wouldn't be the mainstay centre-back for the next 3 years, maybe even 4. Ike reads the game very well. He's very athletic. He's not somebody, although he is quick, he's not somebody who relies on his pace. The reason why he's able to maintain pace, if you will, and keep up with some fast players is because he has a tremendous stride. He has humongous legs and a huge reach as well. When next time you watch him run, watch his strides. They are so that certainly helps him. But there is a young centre half called Wyatt Omsberg who I know they like. And Wyatt Omsberg was drafted as the 15th pick in the 2018 draft out of Dartmouth, I believe, and played a handful of games in 2018. Got a rude introduction to Major League Soccer when he went up against Bradley Wright Phillips on his MLS debut, which didn't go very well at all. And then, this year he's not played any MLS minutes at all because they wanted to develop him away from the first team. They wanted him to get as many minutes in terms of first team football as possible. So they've sent him for the majority of the season to the USL League One affiliate down in Forward Madison. Both him and Carter Manley have spent the majority of the season down there. And, he played about 50.
Yeah, they're an interesting team. I see some of the promotions and stuff they do down there. They've definitely caught my eye.
Yeah, they do things very well. I know they've caught the market in Madison very well as well. And looks like they get, good crowds as well. So it seems to be a good place. I spoke to Wyatt Omsberg when he was back from a loan spell as well before returning to Madison. And he said he loved it. He said the atmosphere was great. It's very popular. He loved working with Darryl Shaw, the head coach at Forward Madison, and it's been a good project for him. And it's exactly what he's needed. He's needed first team minutes. He's needed first team football. But Minnesota United have kept their eye on him, and I'm intrigued to see what happens over the next couple of years for Wyatt Omsberg. Does he get his opportunity? We'll wait and see.
So I guess that's where I was kind of going with that question is with the 3 years then. So would you say that 3 years is the current roster's window to win a championship, if you will? If Ike Opara is that guy that's kind of the spine of the team that you're building around there, and you feel like he has 3 years, would you say that's kind of the window with the current roster right now?
With the majority of them, yes. But, what I will say is in Major League Soccer, I've never seen a league that has I've never seen a league that has this amount of turnover in terms of players. It seems like every off-season there's 15 out and 15 in. It just seems like there's so many that go, and then there's so many that come in. It's almost like a brand new roster almost every year. So with sort of like the mainstays with the likes of Ito Para and Vito Manone, as you say, possibly not Ozzy Alonso. He's 33 now. But the majority of the rest of them, you would say perhaps 3 years. But, look, I don't think there is a window to win a championship with this side. Because look, it depends on the club, doesn't it, as well? Because you have to identify in your own mind what success is. And whilst we would all love to say that winning a championship is success, it's the aim, and it has to be the aim, because otherwise what's the point of competing and playing? But it takes time to build a roster that can compete. It takes time to put individuals together and have them comfortable in certain roles in the formation. So I don't know if there is a window in terms of winning a championship for Minnesota United. I think the most important thing for the Blues moving forward is to remain competitive and to remain a mainstay in the postseason for a couple of years. Look, they came awfully close this year to winning a championship in the Omaha US Open Cup. If they can put another couple of years with a good cup run, you never know. And look, maybe that's what the ownership here define as success. And if that is what it is, then so be it.
Well, I think, like you said, regardless of whether you win or lose on Sunday, it is a successful season compared to the last two. And then where I guess I was going at more than anything, and we've kind of answered this over the course of those last two questions, is whether you ultimately thought this was a team that it would maybe try to win the championship this year, or maybe a team that could get the experience of making a 2 or 3 round run and then make that comeback next year and really look at it as a contender. And it sounds like to me you feel like they've made great strides, but there may be still a little bit of roster building left before you're ready to lift the trophy.
Possibly, yes. But look, what I will say is in 2010, did Colorado Rapids necessarily have the roster to win MLS Cup? In 2013, did Kansas City necessarily have the roster that anybody thought would win an MLS Cup? In 2015, did the Portland Timbers necessarily have the roster that many thought would win an MLS Cup? I think it's safe to say the answer is probably no when you think about those three teams. And we operate in a league now in Major League Soccer where, parity is at its peak. And you just can't ever predict this league. You just never know. And especially in the playoffs as well. The playoffs are unbridled carnage. Let's be honest. It is about as unpredictable of a league as possible. And so I don't really know if I have the answer to that question, but I seriously think that if you go into the postseason and you gain some momentum in the playoffs, you just never know how far you can go.
Right. I think what we've seen throughout MLS playoff history is really those teams that often have that first round bye almost coming at a disadvantage. And so you have LAFC, who had not the best run of form. You mentioned it after the 2-0 loss to United at home. They went 3 draws, 1 win, 1 draw, 1 win. And now they're taking this long extended break. I mean, that's where you get these teams like the Minnesotas or the Portland of 2015 or the Colorado Rapids of 2010 that no one thought, hey, these guys don't have a shot. And they just get that momentum and they come together as a team and they rally. And I think that's where Minnesota's at this year, personally.
Yep, I wouldn't disagree with you. As I say, this league is about as unpredictable as it can possibly be, particularly in the playoffs as well. And look, I mean, we're all aware that there are far superior rosters in the postseason. LAFC have a phenomenal team. LA Galaxy, from an attacking point of view, I would argue it's the best front line in Major League Soccer. The Seattle Sounders, whilst they haven't been as sharp up front this season, always have a trick up their sleeve with the likes of Rui Diaz, Rodero, and Jordan Morris. Real Salt Lake aren't bad either in front of goal. The Timbers, I know they don't have Hernandez because of an issue he's suspended now, but they still have very good players like Blanco and Valeri who can deliver. Iborbachi as well is more than capable. And FC Dallas, you know, they certainly have an informed centre forward going into the playoffs with Ondrasik doing the international stage for the Czech Republic. So it's, you know, look, as I say, there's plenty of teams in the Western Conference this year, in my opinion, which let's be honest, the West has been superior to the Eastern Conference this year. I just think that there's going to be plenty of goals in this forthcoming playoff for sure.
Do you feel like the experience of the U.S. Open Cup, with that being a knockout tournament, will be helpful to you guys in the playoffs, which is also a knockout tournament? I mean, you guys have already, you know, kind of run through one knockout tournament. What I've noticed is, for instance, if you look back into the English leagues and you see, for instance, sometimes the lower level teams that make a good run at the FA Cup, they end up making the playoffs in League One or League Two or the Championship or whatever, and that experience seems to help them. Do you think that kind of thing will translate from the U.S. Open Cup to the playoffs for you guys?
I'm glad you brought this up because I couldn't agree more. I actually think as well the heartache of losing in the Open Cup final will certainly play its part as well because they've experienced the disappointments. They won't want to experience that again.
Close.
You know? So, yes, look, I absolutely agree with that point. And you know, Minnesota and Atlanta went all the way, and Atlanta have obviously done it last season in the last Cup. But, you know, I think it's perhaps not a crazy statement to suggest that Minnesota United may very well go into this round of the playoffs, perhaps the most well-prepared psychologically, because they've, as you suggest, have gone a long way in knockout tournaments. But look, I mean, this is all subjective, isn't it? You know, you go up against somebody like LA Galaxy where, you know, in a flash, Zlatan Ibrahimovic can turn the game on ahead and Christian Pavon can break away and instantly you're in a bit of trouble. So I know I'm not exactly being encyclopedic by saying this, but it does all come down to the 90 minutes on Sunday. And then I think you can start to think about, well, maybe they can go even further now into the playoffs. But, you know, it's going to be interesting. Look, no doubt these cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul are very much engulfed and ignited by the possibility of having a championship team here that hasn't happened for a long time, like a lot of cities in North America. You know, the sports fans here crave a championship team, and you know, it's certainly made its way into the headlines for sure, as it should do. And no doubt all eyes will be on Allianz Field on Sunday evening.
I know that we'll be looking forward to it, and I think that Matt, you kind of wanted to run through the Western Conference bracket a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, we are going to be recording an MLS playoff bracket special in the next couple days. So all three of us, myself, Aaron, and Phil, have filled out our brackets. I know who I have in the final. I know who I have winning the final. But I thought with Callum here, it'd be interesting just to maybe run through the Western Conference and see these matchups going on. So let's start with Minnesota Galaxy 4-5. Callum, what do you think scoreline prediction?
I'm going to say it'll be 3-2 Minnesota.
All right, man. I like that. A high-scoring game right there.
Entertaining stuff. I think that'll be a fun game. And yeah, I'm in favor of any outcome that favors Minnesota, but a 3-2 game like that is always one of the. I think, Matt, you're the one that said the most exciting thing in soccer is to fall behind 2 and then have your team win 3-2.
Yeah, you can't beat that, man. All right, so then we have Salt Lake and Portland in the first round. Callum, you got any thoughts on Salt Lake, Portland? Who wins out of those two teams?
I do. I think with the way the Timbers play, with the sort of 2 inverted wingers, almost 10.5 now, I actually think that Blanco could have a fairly impressive evening. So I'm going to go Portland winning by 2-1 at Salt Lake.
All right. And then finally, left in the first round, we got Seattle, Dallas. Seattle hosting Dallas up there in the Northwest. So who do you got winning that tie?
I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say this, but I think this is possibly the most straightforward of all of the ties across the playoff. I think Dallas, Luchi Gonzalez has done a good job there. They've not spent an absorbent amount of money at all, and to get them into the playoffs again, getting them into the playoffs for his first season as a head coach has been a really good season for them. And I'm really interested to see what Dallas look like in a couple of years. But I think right now it's just not their time. And I think the Sounders will win by 2-0.
All right. So then that puts us at the conference semifinals. Minnesota traveling out west to Bank of California Stadium. How do you see that game going with LAFC?
Well, this is where I think Minnesota's run comes to an end. And this is where I think LAFC will continue their dominance of the Western Conference. And I see LAFC winning by 3-1.
Wow. Okay. Kind of a lopsided scoreline there. So then we got a derby in the other conference semifinal, Seattle, Portland. Seattle would host that one, being the higher seed. Who do you think wins that?
Seattle Sounders will win that by 2-1. Actually, 3-1 as well.
Okay. And then finally, LAFC, Seattle playing to go to MLS Cup and potentially to host at that point, because you got the 1 and 2 seed, depending on how the East shakes out. So you're going to ride the LFC train, or you think Seattle might get a little bit of an upset?
I think I'm going to be tooting that horn on the train and continue with LAFC. It's, they're just phenomenal, aren't they? So I think I'll go for a 2-1 win. It won't be an easy game by any stretch, and the Sounders will give it their all. I could even see the Sounders scoring first, actually, through a set piece. But LAFC, for me, I think, will edge it by 2-1.
So LAFC in the MLS Cup, and just who from the East do you think is going to make it all the way there? Who's kind of the team out East that you think is the team to beat?
Well, I think Atlanta will beat New England. I think the Red Bulls will beat Philadelphia. Toronto, I think, will beat DC. And then it's just carnage, isn't it? I think Atlanta then will beat the Red Bulls. I mean, the NYC Toronto is really a flip of the coin, really, isn't it? I just could possibly, if they're there, has a good evening and puts his opportunities away. You could see New York City, but then I could just with the way they are, I could see Atlanta United doing it again. I really, really could. And so this year, I think it's going to be an LAFC Atlanta United final.
All right, and then that would of course be on the West Coast at Bank of California. And you want to throw out a score prediction for that as well?
I think LAFC will win it on penalties.
All right.
Oh wow, that would be a fun game to watch. I'll tell you that. Now, I did have one question that I wanted to ask you there that was a little bit off the topic, but so now being up there in Minnesota, hockey season just kicked off here about a week and a half ago, and hockey is huge up in Minnesota. Have you found yourself getting into any of the Minnesota Wild games, or you follow hockey at all now that you live in Minnesota?
I have been to 1 or 2 Wild games. Last season, I believe, I went rather late on in the campaign, and we've done a couple of events with 1 or 2 of the Wild players, but I am, I'm afraid I'm a romantic, and I love my sport. I love football. I love soccer. And whilst I will never say I'm uninterested in other sports, I think it's safe to say I'm just far too interested in soccer to really have any time for any other sport, really. It's interesting because I get that question a lot, obviously coming over here to North America. And as I say, if there's another sport that's on, I will certainly watch it. Just before I spoke to you guys, I managed to squeeze an hour in the pub with a friend of mine, with a colleague of mine, and the Monday night football game was on. And, I'll sure, if it's on, I'll watch it. I have no invested interest, but, I am an admirer of good plays and good sport, regardless of the sports. And I'm in such a crazy time that we all live in at the moment, I think sport is something that can unite just about everybody.
I couldn't agree more with that. I couldn't agree more with that. And that's one of the things that I love about sports more than anything else is that, two people who have never met each other in their life, they can sit down and talk about football or, whatever sport it may be. And like you said, any time a sport is on TV, even if it's not one that I follow on a regular basis, I would rather watch that than, whatever reality show or whatever they've got on these days. But the reason that I was asking you that is we're actually starting a spin-off show called Across the Rink, where we're going to be explaining hockey using soccer terminology. So that was something that maybe up in Minnesota people would enjoy that, because I know that up in Minnesota they love their hockey.
They do indeed, and I shall inform those up here in Minnesota that is getting underway. That would be an intriguing listen, I'm sure, especially for somebody like myself, who, as I say, I will go and I will enjoy and I will cheer, but I don't really understand the intricacies of the game of hockey. So something like that would be very advantageous for me to listen to. So yes, I shall give that a listen for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly where the idea came from. Is we have a gentleman named Tony Robinson who's going to co-host with us, and he's actually originally from Accrington, England, and then he moved over to he's just south of Toronto now, and he's lived in Canada for many years, but he started off obviously as a football fan and then moved over to Canada and actually became a hockey coach. So it's going to be an interesting show that we're really looking forward to, and we'll let you know when that gets out, because I think you might enjoy that, especially being up there in Minnesota.
Fabulous. Sounds good. I look forward to it.
Matt, did you have any other questions here before we wrap up?
No, I don't, man. Callum, thank you so much for just giving us, some of your time. I'm sure things are just crazy right now getting ready for this Sunday. I can speak for all of us here at Across the Pitch. We are going to be watching Sunday. We're going to be rooting for the Loons, and we hope that you guys make a deep playoff run here.
No, I appreciate it, chaps. And as always, no problem. Give me a call anytime. I guess I'll take the opportunity to have a little bit of a plug here. Obviously, the game is on television on ESPN with Taylor Trollman and the Supreme Joint Champion. But you can find us on the radio if you're interested on Score North here on the Twin Cities and on Sirius XM across the nation as well. And really looking forward to the game. It's going to be fabulous on Sunday evening.
Excellent. We're really looking forward to it, and we've been following Minnesota all year, and I'll have my scarf and my Loon shirt on, and I will finish up with a Scarves Up Minnesota.
Beautiful. Scarves Up Minnesota. And the new thing that we're saying up here now is say shush. We're silencing all the doubters and the haters up here now. So hashtag say shush is what we're saying up here now, as well as Scarves Up for sure.
Awesome, and thank you again. I can't tell you how much we appreciate you coming on the show and just to have been able to kind of tell the whole story of this fantastic season, beginning, middle, and after. And we're knocking on wood that maybe we will have a fourth interview with you talking about Minnesota lifting that cup.
Let's hope so. Stranger things have happened, haven't they?